This crack has been in this wall for 11 years. I filled it with silicone caulk in 2014. It came back in 6 months. I filled it again with a vinyl spackling compound. It came back in 4 months wider. Last October, I filled it with something else. Something the mason who built this house would have used in 1887 without a second thought. It has not come back. It will not come back. And it cost me $6 in materials. My name is James Merritt, and what I'm about to show you is the reason your hardware store does not sell what it should. The problem with every modern solution. I want you to look at these 3 products. You have probably used at least one of them, maybe all 3. And if you have, you already know what happens. They work. For a season, sometimes 2. And then the crack returns in exactly the same place, usually slightly wider than it was before. This is not bad luck. This is physics. And the industry that sells you these products understands the physics completely. Walls move. Every wall in every building on Earth moves daily, seasonally, continuously. Temperature changes cause thermal expansion and contraction. Moisture causes wood framing to swell and shrink. Settling happens over years as foundations find equilibrium with the soil below them. A crack in a plaster or drywall surface is not damage. It is the wall expressing its movement. The problem with every modern patching product is the same. They are rigid when cured. Silicone becomes a rubbery plug that bonds to the 2 sides of the crack but cannot move with the wall. It tears free usually at one edge within 1 to 3 freeze-thaw cycles. Vinyl spackle is worse. It dries hard and brittle. The wall moves a fraction of a millimeter and the patch simply cracks again along the original fault line. You are not applying these products incorrectly. The products are wrong for the job. They have always been wrong for the job, and the reason they exist at all is a story that starts not with chemistry, but with economics. Before 1920, no professional plasterer in the United States or Europe would have reached for any of these products. They did not exist, and the walls they built did not need them. The history they don't teach in trade school. The oldest lime plaster work still intact today was found inside the Çatalhöyük settlement in Turkey, dated by archaeologists to 7000 BCE. That is 9,000 years ago. The walls were smooth, painted, and when excavated, the plaster had not cracked through. Not in 9,000 years. This is not because ancient builders were more talented than we are. It is because lime plaster is not a rigid patch material. It is a living material, and it behaves the way living materials behave. Lime is calcium oxide produced by burning limestone at high temperature. When it reacts with water, a process called slaking, it becomes calcium hydroxide, lime putty. Builders in the ancient Mediterranean kept lime putty in sealed pits for years, sometimes decades before using it. The longer it aged, the more workable it became. When lime putty is spread onto a wall and exposed to air, it begins a slow chemical process called carbonation, absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and converting back, gradually, into calcium carbonate, limestone again. The same material the rock it came from was made of. That process takes months, sometimes years for a thick application. And during that entire time, the plaster remains slightly plastic, able to flex microfractions of a millimeter without cracking. Roman architects used it on the Pantheon. The interior lime plaster of the Pantheon dome has been continuously intact for 19 centuries, through earthquakes, through floods, through the collapse of an empire. It moves with the building. That is why it survives. But lime plaster alone has one vulnerability: intention when the wall pulls apart rather than compresses together. A pure lime surface will eventually crack along the line of stress. The ancient builders knew this, and the solution they developed is the second ingredient in this formula: fiber reinforcement. Specifically, plant fiber worked into the wet plaster before application. Horsehair was the traditional reinforcement in European lime plaster for centuries. You can still find it in the walls of houses built in England before 1900 if you open them up for renovation. In regions where horsehair was scarce, craftsmen used flax fiber, hemp fiber, straw, and in South Asia and Southeast Asia, jute. The fiber does not add rigidity to the plaster, it adds tensile strength. When the wall moves and the plaster is pulled in tension, the fiber network inside it distributes that stress across thousands of interlocking strands instead of concentrating it at one failure point. The crack that was going to open along a stress line cannot open because the fiber bridges it. This is, in engineering terms, the same principle as rebar in reinforced concrete, except it was understood and applied by plasterers working entirely from empirical knowledge, 2000 years before structural engineering existed as a discipline. The knowledge of fiber-reinforced lime plaster was so universal that it barely warranted documentation in historical building manuals. It was simply what plaster was. You did not need to explain it any more than you needed to explain what mortar was. That changed in the 1940s and 1950s. Why it disappeared? The post-war construction boom in America needed speed. Millions of homes were being built simultaneously. Gypsum drywall, which could be installed in panels in hours rather than applied wet over days, replaced wet plaster as the interior wall standard almost overnight, between 1945 and 1960. The plasterer's trade, which had required years of apprenticeship and a genuine understanding of material behavior, was largely replaced by the drywall installer, whose job required competence but not craft knowledge. Lime putty, which requires mixing, aging, and a minimum of 2 to 3 coats applied over days, was replaced by pre-mixed compounds that could be applied in one coat and painted the next morning. None of these changes were necessarily wrong. Speed has value, accessibility has value, but something specific was lost. The understanding that a wall repair material must behave like the wall, must flex, breathe, and move in sync with the substrate it is bonded to. The products that replaced lime plaster patching were formulated for speed, shelf stability, and ease of application, not for long-term mechanical compatibility with the wall. Silicon caulk was developed as an industrial sealant for high-movement joints in manufacturing. It was adopted for wall crack repair because it was available and flexible. Nobody in a corporate R&D department sat down and asked whether it was actually the right material for a plaster wall. It was close enough. It sold. It sells again when it fails. The formula I'm going to show you cannot be patented. Lime has been burned from limestone for 10,000 years. Jute fiber has been processed from plants for 6,000 years. Their combination in wall plaster predates recorded history. There is no proprietary molecule, no trade secret, no intellectual property. And what cannot be patented cannot generate licensing revenue. And what cannot generate licensing revenue has no marketing budget. So, it disappeared. Not buried intentionally, simply left behind, one generation at a time, until a homeowner looking at the same crack for the 4th year running types something into a search engine and finds sponsored results for the product that will fail again next spring. The formula. 3 ingredients. The formula has not changed in 2000 years. First, hydrated lime. Not agricultural lime, not quick lime. Hydrated lime, also called Type S lime or finishing lime in building supply catalogs. It comes as a dry white powder. A 25-pound bag costs approximately $8 to $12 at a masonry supply house, not a big box store, which will carry it only inconsistently. One bag will treat every crack in an average house several times over. Second, fine silica sand or sharp sand. The aggregate gives the plaster body, controls shrinkage during drying, and determines the final texture of the surface. For hairline and medium cracks, use a fine sand, 30 to 60 mesh. For wider gaps, a coarser 20 mesh sand gives more volume. A 50-pound bag of masonry sand runs $3 to $5. Third, jute fiber, cut or pulled into lengths of roughly 1 to 2 inches. Jute is available from any garden supply store as jute twine, which you simply cut into short sections and tease apart into individual filaments, or from upholstery supply houses as raw carded jute. For an entire house repair project, you will use less than 100 grams of fiber. A spool of jute twine costs $2. Total material cost for a full wall repair project, $6 to $15 depending on your local prices. The contractor estimate I received for replastering 3 cracked walls in my front room was $4,200. I did all 3 walls on a Saturday and a Sunday morning. The mix ratio is simple. 3 parts sand to 1 part hydrated lime by volume. Add water gradually. The consistency you are looking for is thick peanut butter. It should hold its shape on a trowel, but spread smoothly under pressure. Not runny, not crumbly. Once the base mix is uniform, work in the jute fiber. A small handful per quart of mix. Use your hands or a stiff paddle. The goal is even distribution throughout the plaster, not clumping. The fibers should be suspended through the material, not matted in one area. Mix for 2 to 3 minutes until the fiber is integrated. Let the mix rest for 10 minutes after initial mixing. This is called slaking time. The lime continues to hydrate and the mix tightens slightly. Stir once more before applying. Preparation is not optional and it is not complicated. The one thing lime plaster will not do is bond to a dusty or loose surface. Use the stiff brush to clean all loose material out of the crack. Every particle of old caulk, every piece of crumbling edge, every grain of dust. If old silicone caulk is in there, cut it out with a utility knife and remove it entirely. Lime will not bond to cured silicone. Do not leave any silicone behind and expect it to work. After brushing, spray the crack and the surrounding wall surface lightly with water, not soaking damp. This prevents the dry wall from pulling moisture too quickly from the fresh plaster and causing premature, shallow drying that reduces bond strength. This step takes 30 seconds and the traditional builders called it wearing the key. Modern repair manuals almost never mention it. Apply the first coat, the scratch coat, working the plaster firmly into the crack with the tip of the trowel. Pack it in. The goal of the first coat is not surface appearance, it is deep penetration and mechanical bond. Push the material into every void. For a wide crack, the scratch coat should fill the lower 2/3 of the crack depth. Then, with the corner of the trowel, scratch the surface of the wet plaster lightly in a crosshatch pattern. This is why it is called the scratch coat. The scored surface gives the second coat something to grip. Let the scratch coat dry for 24 hours. Do not rush this, do not use a heat gun. The carbonation process that makes lime plaster strong is slow and requires ambient air movement. Heat drying creates a crust that traps moisture beneath, and the plaster will powder from the inside. Wet the surface again before applying the finish coat. Mix a slightly richer second batch, 2.5 parts sand to 1 part lime, slightly wetter consistency. No fiber required in the finish coat, although it does not hurt if some fiber remains from the first batch in your tools. Apply the finish coat with the wider finishing trowel in long, smooth strokes. Feather the edges out onto the surrounding wall so there is no hard line where the repair ends. Work the surface while still wet with a slightly damp trowel to compress and smooth. This is called burnishing, and it is what gives traditional lime plaster its characteristic smooth, slightly reflective surface that no pre-mixed compound can replicate. The repair will look slightly white and chalky for the first 2 to 3 days as the surface carbonation begins. Do not paint it during this period. After 72 hours, the surface will have settled to a consistent tone and texture. At that point, it can be painted with any water-based paint. The lime surface accepts paint without a primer coat. Full carbonation of the repair, the point at which it reaches maximum hardness and flexibility, takes approximately 4 weeks. During this time, the repair is functional and looks finished, but avoid heavy impact near the area. I applied this repair to 3 walls in October. They went through a full winter freeze, thaw, expansion, contraction. One of those walls is an exterior-facing wall with significant thermal movement. I checked every repair in March. Every one of them is intact. Not a hairline, not a shadow of the original crack visible under raking light. The wall looks as it was built. The deeper truth about your walls. I want to say something about what this repair actually does, because it is different from how we are trained to think about home repair. When you fill a crack with silicone caulk, you are sealing the crack. You are putting a plug in a hole and hoping the hole does not reopen. The wall and the repair are 2 separate systems. The wall moves, the plug resists movement. Eventually, the plug loses. Lime plaster does not seal the crack, it becomes part of the wall. The carbonation chemistry bonds the repair to the existing plaster at a molecular level. Calcium carbonate crystals grow across the interface between old and new material. The repair and the original wall become over weeks the same material. When the wall moves, the repair moves with it. There is no interface to fail at. This is why the Pantheon's plaster has outlasted 2,000 years of Roman history. It was never fighting the building, it was the building. The $6 formula cannot be advertised because nobody owns it. It cannot generate recurring revenue because it does not fail. The repair you make this weekend with a bag of lime and a handful of jute string is the last repair you will make on that crack. That is not a selling point that moves product. That is a fact that moves people. I walk through your house right now and find the oldest crack you have been ignoring. The one you've spackled twice and given up on. The one behind the dresser. The one running diagonally from the door frame that you repainted and pretended wasn't there. Leave me the year the house was built in the comments, nothing else. I want to know how long these walls have been asking for the right repair and getting the wrong one. The lime is at a masonry supply house. The jute is in the garden section of any store on earth. The formula is in a bucket in 20 minutes. The crack is not coming back. I'm James Merritt. This is Forgotten Craft.